What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and this is no normal video. This is a very important video. This is part one of my biannual top 50 players in the entire NHL list. I do this twice a year on January 15th and July 15th. I started out on my Instagram. I'm obviously incorporating my YouTube into it now. I do this midway through the season, January 15th, and then post-draft, post-free agency, post-playoffs, all that good stuff. So in looking at this list, it's a very hard thing to do. I'm not going to lie. Today's list of 31 through 50, there is not that much separating these players. As we do probably tomorrow or 2 days from now, I'm going to do 11 through 30 and then the top 10. There's far more separation there. 31 through 50, there's the comments are going to be war. I already know it. There's not that much. A player that I have at 37 compared to 42, there's like nothing separating them for the most part, just my personal preference. And when looking at this, it's weird because we are at the half point mark. When I did my list 6 months ago in July, it was roughly like 65% based on the most recent season, 30% the previous season, and then 5% like prior seasons. But the fact we are only halfway through this season, the way I kind of do it is roughly 48% this season, give or take, 42% last season because that was a full 82-game sample size, and then as well as 10% on prior seasons. When looking at younger guys, I do value the most recent season more than prior seasons because they're obviously improving every single year, but for veterans, I do care about their track record overall. So when looking at this, there's not a perfect science to it. It is just the 50 best players in my opinion, but I do value the seasons. I weight the seasons a little bit on top of that. So without further ado, let's dive into it. At number 50 is Clayton Keller. Clayton Keller last year absolutely exploded for 39 goals, 47 assists for 86 points on a pretty bad Coyotes team. The Coyotes have improved. His numbers have fallen off a little bit. He has 17 goals, 21 assists for 38 points in 41 games, but still definitely the number one offensive option on that team. I think if you put him on a more talented team, he'd be consistently around 80, 85, maybe even 90 points. A very skilled player. I do think he got a little bit overrated this past offseason. I had him on my last list when I did this in July. I had him, I think, 47th. People were screaming at me over that, but I think around the 45 to 50 spot now it does make some sense, considering he's not exactly replicating that production, but still a very elite player. Still a very, very elite first liner. Let's move on to 49. At 49, Robert Thomas, one of the best passers in the entire NHL. He doesn't rack up goals, but he's going to find the tape of your stick, basically, through and through. His teammate Jordan Kyrou has kind of fallen off a little bit. That is not the case with Robert Thomas. Robert Thomas is having a career year with 16 goals, 28 assists, 44 points in 41 games. Probably going to cruise to 85 points, maybe even 90. Again, the name of the game is offense with the Robert Thomas. His defensive game has came a long way from early on, but this guy is just such a fantastic playmaker and passer. I think you got to have him. Not a top 10 center, maybe even not a top 15, but definitely top 20 in my opinion based on what he's doing this season. 48, this is when we start to get into the last season does matter in this because I have Nico Hischier right now. He doesn't deserve to be top 50, probably not even top 75. If we're just being 100% honest, he was 29th on my list 6 months ago because he was fantastic. He was the Selke runner-up. He was 81 points in 82 games. He was arguably a top 25 player in the entire NHL last year, probably top 35 safely. But this year, it really hasn't. The offensive production just has not been the same. His offensive underlying numbers have still been solid. Defensive numbers have fallen back a little bit. He has 11 goals, 10 assists for 21 points in 29 games. He did get hurt for a stretch there, so with Hischier, I am expecting him to, in the back half of the season, especially now with the Jack Hughes out maybe week to week, he's going to have to really step up. He's going to have to be that point per game, Selke level guy if New Jersey is going to survive. I'm just realizing my hair is all over the place. But if New Jersey is going to survive without Jack Hughes and end up making the playoffs, Nico Hischier needs to show up. And if he doesn't show up, he ain't going to be on the list come July 15th. So I'm still putting him on there because I know what he's capable of, but he hasn't really shown it. At 47, we are staying in the New Jersey, New York area. We have Bo Horvat. Last year, 37 goals, 33 assists. Was playing fantastic on the Vancouver Canucks. Comes over the New York Islanders. doesn't have nearly the same success mid-season trade. He's like half a point per game for them. I was very disappointed as a New York Islanders fan, but he came into this training camp, had a full training camp with Matt Barzal, and obviously has looked like that number one center, 8 years, $8.5 million that you expected. Right now he has 17 goals, 23 assists for 40 points in 41 games. So when you stack on those 2 seasons, he has been a solid number one center in the NHL, obviously on a team that's battling for a wild card spot right now. I think him and Barzal form one of the better duos in the entire NHL, at least this season. And I think his defensive work has really impressed me this season. He's putting up some of his best defensive numbers of his entire career, really blossoming into that near point per game two-way center that you expected when you signed him to this massive deal. At 46, Matt Barzal. Matt Barzal is at number 46. He had a pretty solid season last year, 51 points in 58 games, on pace for 72 points. But obviously he did get hurt, so he only finished with 51 points. People always shat on him because he hadn't reached 70 points since his rookie year. He's gotten hurt a shit ton. He's been on 70-point pace basically the last 3 or 4 years. And this year he is really breaking out again with Bo Horvat. The transition to wing has been very successful for a guy like Matt Barzal. He has 45 points in 40 games. Looks like he might end up getting 90 points on the goddamn season. And when looking at him, I do slightly lean Barzal over Horvat, just because Matt Barzal's skating, it's just next level. Like, getting to watch him every single night just dominate possession with his fantastic skating. Defensemen just cannot keep up with this guy. I think he has that game-breaking trait that does kind of put me over Horvat. I think Horvat's the more consistent player, but if it comes playoff time and I need someone to generate something, I'm probably putting the puck on Matt Barzal's stick and making it happen. So yeah, probably going to cruise to well over a point per game this year, really emerging as, he's not a center anymore most of the time, but one of the best wingers now in the entire NHL. 45. Dylan Larkin, speaking about reliable point-per-game two-way centers, Dylan Larkin has been the definition of that over the last 3 seasons. 2 years ago, 31 goals, 38 assists for 69 points in 71 games. Last year's 32 goals, 47 assists, 79 points in 80 games. This year, 16 goals, 20 assists, 36 points in 36 games. This guy is basically a lock for mid 30 goals, 40-ish, 45-ish assists, point per game every single year at this point. He's about as consistent as it comes. Very good defensive center. I think that he is knocking on top 15 center, maybe even top 10. Not quite top 10, but definitely knocking in that range of 13 through 17 when looking at the centers in the NHL. Number 44, we got another New York Islander. I don't even think I'm being biased by having 3 New York Islanders in my top 50, because Noah Dobson is absolutely balling out for the New York Islanders right now. 43 points in 42 games for the team. He's probably going to cruise to well past the 70 points. I can't quite have him top 30, top 25, because in my opinion, he's been a top 5 defenseman in the entire NHL this season. Just doesn't quite have the track record of some other defensemen and some other forwards like others when I'm comparing multiple seasons on top of each other. But he's been a solid around 50-point offensive top pair defenseman the last 2 years for my New York Islanders. This year, obviously fully broken out. Last year, 20 minutes and 23 seconds a night. This year, 25 minutes, 50 seconds. And he's been playing like almost 27 the past 20 or 25 games. There's a good chance that this dude is going to be the goddamn time on ice leader in the entire NHL. With guys like Pelech and Polak going down early in the season, he's really stepped up and risen to the occasion. And as a result, I have him at the number 44 spot. 43. Jacob Slavin. Jacob Slavin, he's Mr. Defensive Defenseman, has posted the best defensive results in the entire NHL for the past 5 years. Previously, I may have said Chris Tanev. He kind of has fallen off with the age of this year, but he has been just locked down defensively. Not the most flashy offensive stats. Last year kind of fell off a decent amount offensively. This year on pace for like high 30 points. Just so reliable when looking at shutdown defensive defensemen that can play semi-big minutes. Jacob Slavin is your best bet for that. So I think him at 43, it makes a lot of sense. 42, Jesper Bratt. Jesper Bratt is playing fantastic this year for the New Jersey Devils. 46 points in 40 games. And yes, he does play with Jack Hughes, but he has been able to produce on his own. And I think he is going to produce, especially now that he's like the go-to puck carrier on the New Jersey Devils. This guy is one of the best skaters in the entire NHL, just able to generate so many goddamn chances off the rush. I believe he's been about mid-70 points the past 2 seasons for the Devils. I think he's going to go north of 80 this year. And if Jack Hughes is fully healthy, maybe 90, 95 isn't out of the question. Maybe even 100 next year when him and Jack Hughes are fully healthy. He is a fantastic player. And although I'm speaking about Jack Hughes again, he is not a Jack Hughes byproduct. He is a fantastic player in his own right. When he doesn't play with Jack Hughes, he produces at a high level. When he plays with Jack Hughes, it's one of the most dynamic, one of the best skating duos in the entire NHL. Let's move over to 41. Kevin Fiala. Kevin Fiala, 72 points in 69 games for the LA Kings last year. This year, he has 37 and 39. I think he's one of the best playmakers, passers in the entire NHL. Because you look at it, the LA Kings' top line is stacked with talent with Byfield, Kopitar, and Kempe. He's producing fantastic results on a line with Trevor Moore, who has been a solid 40-ish point guy, but now he's breaking out for almost high 30s goals this year pace because of a guy like Kevin Fiala, as well as Philip Deneau, who is obviously known for his defensive capabilities. He's around the 45 to 50 point offensive guy. Kevin Fiala has really driven that line this season to a lot of success, and especially early on when the LA Kings were one of the best teams in the NHL. They have fallen off recently, but I think Kevin Fiala is a very underappreciated winger in the NHL. If he had a better center to play with, I think he'd be going for north of 90 points multiple seasons. 40 into the top 40, Tim Stützle. Tim Stützle definitely taken a step back this year, at least goal scoring wise. 39 goals last year was absolutely insane. 51 assists for 90 points. This year, only 7 goals in 38 games. That is not nearly good enough for a guy of Tim Stützle's stature. He's still on pace for I think around point per game. He's going to get his own, but just the points have not really come this year. But his underlying numbers have improved. His even strength offense in terms of play driving and his even strength defense have improved. It's more just the finishing. I don't think the finishing is going to stay this bad considering, again, 39 goddamn goals last year. I think going forward, back half of the season, he should be putting up around 30 goal, 60 assist pace with the Ottawa Senators. Next year, I think he'll get it back on track. I think he'll go 90 or north. But right now, it has been very disappointing for a guy like Tim Stützle, a guy that we expected to fully take that next step. 39, Josh Morrissey, 76 points in 78 games last year. I was a little bit apprehensive about him because he'd never broken 40 in his goddamn career. This year, he has proven that he is a legit number one offensive defenseman in this entire league. 32 points in 42 games, so on pace for around low 60s, not quite 60, 76 points in 78 games, but still a very efficient offensive defenseman. And this year in particular, his defensive numbers have risen a lot. And as a result, the Jets have been one of the better teams in the entire goddamn NHL and are probably going to end up winning the goddamn Central Division. So in looking at Josh Morrissey, he's rounded his game a lot more out this year compared to last year. It was really all offense, not a ton of defense. This year, still on pace for low 60s, as well as being in the top 30 percentile in defense. That is a legit top 10 defenseman, in my opinion. With those 2 years stacked on top of each other, I think he's in the top 40. Mika Zibanejad at 38. Rough start for Zibanejad, 10 points in his first 16 games this season. Then he put up 29 in the following 24. So he's about on pace for point per game right now. This is a guy that had 39 goals last year, 52 assists for 91 points. I think that he's around that 85 to 90 point guy, still a legit number one center, playing obviously off Chris Kreider. They work so well together, him feeding Chris Kreider dominating in front of the net. So I think Mika Zibanejad, while might not get back to that 39-90, I think he's going to be solid low 30s, around 85 to 90 points going forward for the New York Rangers. Up next at 37, Connor Bedard. Glazing! That's what everybody's going to say to me. But I've watched this kid play. This is one of the guys, non-Islanders, that I've seen the most of this season, and he just pops. He's a fantastic talent. 15 goals, 18 assists for 33 points in 38 games on the second worst team in the entire NHL. And honestly, Chicago probably has a worse forward core than the San Jose Sharks. San Jose Sharks have a god-awful defense core. And when looking at Bedard this season, he's put up that 70 point pace on a line. His number one line has been Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev. If you put this guy on a capable team, he's probably going for 40 and 50, 90 points. I don't think that's ridiculous to say. You watch him play, you see the obvious talent, but just the talent deficiency overall around him. And yes, the defensive numbers have not been good for Connor Bedard, but also Chicago sucks defensively. No one's defensive numbers have been good on Chicago. So I think, yeah, I just see the talent. I know people are going to call he doesn't have the track record. He doesn't have the actual stats yet. I think given the team situation, what he's done this early, we saw it with McDavid. He wasn't quite as good as McDavid in his rookie year, but he has far less talent around him compared to McDavid in his rookie year. And McDavid, in my opinion, was a top 10 player in the NHL his rookie year. I think we're going to look back and say, yeah, when Bedard breaks out for 45 goals and 50 assists next year, we're going to realize, yeah, he was that good last year, just had an absolutely shit team around him. 36. Philip Forsberg. It's been a really weird 3 seasons for Philip Forsberg. 42 goals and 42 assists 2 years ago in just 69 games, which is close to like 50 and 50 pace when the Predators were like absolute offensive wagon that season. Then last year, he only has 19 goals, 23 assists for 42 points in 50 games. So kind of at a shit burger sandwich by his standards in between there. But he is fully back with 22 goals, 26 assists for 48 points in just 43 games. He is carrying the Predators offensively, at least him and Roman Josi in terms of the forward core. He's carrying them. And as a result, they are firmly in the wild card hunt. If he ends up getting 90, 95 points, I could see an argument for him to get a Hart vote, not a first place vote, maybe a 4th or 5th place vote. But I thought Nashville's forward core coming into the season was very disappointing. And as a result, he had to really step up his game. He has. And if they make the playoffs and he finishes 90, 95 points, I think that's one of the most impressive seasons this season, at least. Next up, Tage Thompson at 35. Last year, exploded 47 and 47 for 94 points. I had him, I think, 22nd when I did this 6 months ago. Obviously, it was a really tough start for Tage Thompson. He had 1 point in his first 6 games. Early on, I think it was mid-November, got hurt for a couple weeks. He has bounced back last 27 games. He has 13 goals, 13 assists for 26 points, which is around 40 and 40 pace. But I think last year might have been Tage Thompson's offensive peak, which is, again, fantastic offensive peak. 47 goals, 47 assists. He has rounded out his defensive game. I still think he is a legit number 1 center, top 15 center, but I do think that we do need to taper our expectations with Tage Thompson back a little bit. And last year, I'm not sure he's ever going to, maybe he'll put up 40 and 45 again, but I'm not sure that he's that complete overall number one top 10 center. Top 15, I could see. I'm not sure he's ever going to reach that level. He is 26 right now, so we'll see what happens with Tage Thompson, but I am a little bit stock low on Tage Thompson, and I think it is kind of justified. 34, Brad Marchand, still an elite two-way winger. I'm not trying to debate that, but he has been below point per game the past 2 years. That's the first time that's happened since 2015, 2016. So again, I just don't think that he has that high offensive ceiling anymore. David Pastrnak really has to carry that forward core as of right now, but he is still just such a veteran pest, fantastic two-way player that can get you 75, maybe even 80 points, get up that level. So when looking at Brad Marchand, he has been kind of falling in my rankings. I think 2 years ago, he was like 13th. Then a year and a half ago, he was like 19th, then 23rd, then 29th. Like, it's been a slow regression, but he still is definitely an elite player. I'm not trying to belittle him by any way. Up next, 33, Jake Gensel, contract year. There's another guy in a contract year coming up soon. Contract year, balling out with Crosby. 19 goals, 27 assists for 46 points in 41 games. He is never going to be like the number 1 player driving his offense, driving his forward core, but he plays so well off of Sidney Crosby. He's one of the best complementary pieces in the entire league. He just fills his role so well. Since he's basically entered the league, he's been a consistent guy on pace for like high 30s, 40 goals. It looks like he's yet again going to do that. Probably going to finish around 40 goals, 50 assists based on what he's going at right now. Just a very impressive player in my opinion, and I think he works just so well with Sidney Crosby and would, if he somehow ends up elsewhere, is going to work fantastic with any playmaking, fantastic center that he could end up with. Next up, Sam Reinhart at 32. One more to go after this. Sam Reinhart, contract year, 31 goals, 23 assists, 54 points in 42 games. He is legit a top 10 player in the NHL, at least this season. It is kind of tough with him. I'm not going to get so recency biased just because of how good he's playing right now. Last year, he was still an elite first liner, 31 goals, 36 assists, 67 points. And the year prior, when they won the President's Trophy, he was 33 goals, 49 assists for 82 points. So he's been an elite, very good two-way guy. His defensive play doesn't get enough recognition. Yes, he does play with Alexander Barkov, but he's very good defensively in his own right. So when looking at Sam Reinhart, this year is fantastic. I'm not sure he's going to be replicating this once he signs his mega deal, but I think going forward, Sam Reinhart can be a reliable 35 goal, 50 assists, 85, maybe even 90-point guy while giving you very, 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 very good defense. And for the 32nd best player in the entire NHL, I think that does make some sense. And lastly, 31, the last one for this part, Rasmus Dahlin. 74 points last year, fully broke out, cashed his mega 8-year, $11 million per contract. Still playing very good this year. 34 points in 42 games. His defensive numbers have taken a little bit of a step back, but I think considering last year was the breakout, but the year prior he wasn't that good. The fact he's basically stacking two 65 to 74 point seasons. I think he solidified himself as a top 7, top 8 defenseman in the entire league. He's going to be worth that $11 million. Definitely would like to see his defensive numbers boost, but Buffalo on the whole has been very disappointing, especially from a defensive perspective. But I still think he is reliable, 70-ish, 75. I think he's eventually going to break out in 2 to 3 years and have that 85, 90-point season like a Quinn Hughes. But until Buffalo, some of their young guys take that next step, as well as him really breaking out, I don't think that's going to happen. So I have him at 31 as of right now, on the outside of the top 5 defensemen in the entire NHL. But let's run it back. 50, Keller. 49, Thomas. 48, Hischier. 47, Horvat. 46, Barzal. 45, Larkin. 44, Dobson. 43, Slavin. 42nd, Bratt. 41st, Fiala. 40th, Stützle. 39th, Morrissey. 38th, Zibanejad. 37th, Bedard. 36th, Forsberg. 35th, Thompson. 34th, Marchand. 33rd, Gensel. 32nd, Reinhart. And 31st, Rasmus Dahlin. But let me know in the comments. What do you think about this? I'm sure the Bedard take's going to get people going. And I'll probably in 2 days drop the next 11 through 30. And then on Thursday, drop the top 10. But let me know in the comments. What do you think? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.